Hello, gentle people. I am Keisha, Resto Druid and Healing Officer of the Guild Months Behind. This guide will hopefully help you to understand your class and the healing role Druids have in a raid. No guide will be absolutely conclusive, and what I say might not necessarily work for every boss fight. The role of a Resto Druid has primarily always been one of a raid healer, but recently Blizzard has given us a few tweaks that let us give a little more in the role of a tank healer. If you spec correctly, a Druid can be a powerful support tank healer if it is absolutely needed. However, most of the time we are best utilized when raid healing. Our strengths are our HOTS, or heal over time spells. The one we use the most is called Rejuvenation. It is the bread and butter of our healing spread. It is based off the GCD, or global cooldown. Next is Wild Growth, which has an 8-second cooldown and heals 5 targets over 7 seconds, or 6 targets if you glyph it, and 8 if you use it during your Tree of Life cooldown. Then there's Life Bloom. It can only be applied to one person at a time, except when you are in your tree form, and it stacks up to 3 times, each time getting more powerful. It lasts about 10 seconds, but the timer is refreshed every time you apply a new Life Bloom. This spell will typically be kept on tanks at all times, since they take the most regular damage. When you let the Life Bloom expire, or bloom, it hits for the same amount as Healing Touch, one of your castable spells. You also have a spell called Swift Mend, which can only be used when either Rejuvenation or Regrowth Hot is on the target. It is essentially an instant 13 to 15k heal, but it has a 15-second cooldown. There are 3 casted heals: Nourish, Healing Touch, and Regrowth. Regrowth is a very expensive but short heal. It has a weak hot, and the initial healing is fairly weak for a casted heal. You should typically use it when someone needs to be healed up immediately and can't wait 3 to 4 seconds for another spell. There are several talents that improve the spell, which will be discussed later. Nourish is, at its base, the typical cheap but longer spell. It is very weak initially, around 6k, but can heal for more if you have a hot on the target, and then it goes up by 20%, which roughly puts the heal around 8 or 9k. Then there is Healing Touch, which has the same cast time as your Nourish, but is 4 times as expensive. However, it heals about 3 times as much on average as your Nourish, so use it when you know the tank or person you're healing is going to take large and predictable hits. This is your stat priority. The stats you want to look for are Intellect, Haste, and Mastery. Intellect gives you spell power, crit, and increased mana pool. Haste makes your hots and spells tick and cast faster. Mastery is a whole separate animal now, but it will essentially make your hots heal for even more. Crit is our weakest stat, so you'll want to get rid of any crit you have via reforging, whenever possible. Spirit is arguably also weak for Druids, since we get very little value from it while casting, and Druids are almost always casting. Haste. There are certain points, or caps, that Druids need to hit in order to get an extra tick from one of their hots. The most attainable one in current tier 11 gear will be the 915 cap. 915 haste will net you an extra tick of rejuvenation in standard 12 seconds. The general wisdom is if you can't hit the 2003 cap, which provides an extra wild growth tick, then stay at the 915 or 920 cap and forge extra haste into mastery. The reason is you will rarely let your life bloom tick the entire time. You will keep refreshing it to save you from reapplying each stack, and the regrowth hot is very weak and a very expensive thing to use. The extra haste would be more beneficial in Mastery. Mastery has changed in 4.2. Essentially, our Mastery now stresses the utilization of our casted heals. It becomes Harmony, which increases direct healing by an additional 10%, and casting direct healing spells grants an additional 10% bonus to periodic healing for 10 seconds. Each point of Mastery increases each bonus by an additional 1.25%. Healing Touch, Nourish, Swift Mend, and the initial heal from Regrowth are considered direct healing spells for the purposes of this Mastery. So basically, if I cast a Regrowth, then all hots after, including the Regrowth hot, will have their healing increased by 10%. The way my gear is at the moment, I have 13.43 Mastery, so each point above 8 will increase my hot healing by an additional 1.25%. If I heal with Regrowth, Swift Mend, Nourish, and Healing Touch, all hots cast after that 10 seconds will have their healing increased by almost 17%, which is pretty amazing. So Druids will now definitely enjoy their Mastery a lot more, but it will require us to be more aware of Harmony's uptime, and to cast a Swift Mend, Nourish, Regrowth, or Healing Touch more than we would have before 4.2. Now it's time to look at talents. Depending on your gear and whether you do 10 mans or 25 mans, your spec will look different. I will take you through my standard spec for 4.2 and explain options that you can go with depending on what you need. This is not my current spec, because in 4.2 my spec will change to reflect the changes to mastery and crit healing. In 4.2, heals that crit will now receive 100% extra healing instead of the 50% previously. To begin with, select Restoration. The first tier you will take Blessing of the Grove, Natural Shapeshifter, and Heart of the Wild. This increases your Rejuvenation spell healing, your Tree of Life buff, and your Intellect respectively. Take Master Shapeshifter, which increases all of your healing by 4%, as well as improve Rejuve. As stated previously, Rejuve and Swiftmend are both staples of Druid healing. Anything to improve the two is considered an excellent thing. The next tiers are where it gets tricky. I will take 2 out of 3 Living Seed, which means that each time I crit heal, the next time that person takes damage they will be healed by 20% of whatever I critted with. I then take 2 out of 2 Revitalize. That gives us a chance to get mana back every time we heal with Rejuve or Life Bloom, as well as giving us Replenishment, which is a raid-wide buff that regenerates mana for 15 seconds. I then take Nature's Swiftness, which is a 3-minute cooldown that lets your next castable spell be instant. If it is a healing spell, it will increase the amount healed by 50%. I usually macro Nature's Swiftness with Healing Touch, since it is our largest heal, but depending on how powerful Regrowth is in 4.2, I might change that to Regrowth, since it has such a high crit chance. I then get 2 out of 3 Nature's Bounty, which increases the critical chance of regrowth by 40%. With the 100% bonus to critical healing spells, paired with the Living Seed you get when you crit with a healing spell, this seems like a solid pairing. This talent also decreases the casting time of your Nourish if you have 3 Rejuves on the raid. Now this is a very situational thing, and since I don't get the decreased Nourish cast time talent, I probably will try to utilize it more this patch. I also get Empowered Touch and Malfurion's Gift, which increases direct or casted healing and refreshes my Life Bloom stacks if I heal someone with a casted heal that has them. Gift will also cause the clear casting buff to proc, a chance on each Life Bloom tick, that makes the next casted spell cost no mana. This means the Regrowth, Nourish, or Healing Touch. Now it lasts for 12 seconds, so you will want to definitely take advantage of that when you have it. It only lasts for 1 spell, but you have 12 seconds to cast one. Malfurion's Gift also takes your 8-minute Tranquility cooldown down to 3 minutes, letting you use it multiple times in one fight. I then take Efflorescence, which puts a healing circle on the ground around the person I use Swiftmend on, healing for 7 seconds. The amount healed is based off of how much the Swiftmend healed for. I typically use Swiftmend on melee, who are almost always grouped closely, or, depending on the fight, someone who has people grouped around them, so that I get the most out of this talent. I then take Wild Growth since you need it for tree form, and it's quite a powerful spell. I take Gift of the Earth Mother and Swift Rejuve, which increases the Life Bloom healing when it blooms, and will make your Rejuve instantly heal a portion of the total healing. And of course, Tree of Life, which is the cooldown that lets you cast Life Blooms on multiple targets, makes regrowth instant, but still costs mana, and lets Wild Growth hit 2 additional people, for a total of 8. This will last 31 seconds with these talents. You typically use Tree of Life form when there's a lot of raid damage going out. It has a 3-minute cooldown, so you can typically use it at either once or twice a boss fight. It also increases all healing done by 15%, so use Tranquility, which is also a 3-minute cooldown, during Tree of Life. That gives you the 31 points in the Restoration tree, and unlocks the other 2. I put points into Nature's Grace and Mastery, which increases my crit chance, and gives me a 15% 15-second haste buff after I cast Regrowth. Then round out the last 5 points with Genesis and Moonglow. Genesis is an across-the-board 6% increase in hot healing. Moonglow decreases mana cost of your spells. My spec may change depending on the boss fight, or what I find helps in progression nights for Firelands. If you do 10 mans primarily, you will want to drop 1 point somewhere to get Nature's Cure, which lets us dispel magic. I take it in 25 mans for certain fights. What you drop is up to you, but I would probably look at dropping a point from the Gift of the Earth Mother, or even Swift Rejuve. I don't heal 10 mans as a druid, so I can't say which would be better. That's up to you. If you find you have mana problems, whether it is gear or the fight, you should probably drop Genesis, and get 3 out of 3 Moonglow, and then get 2 out of 3 Inferior, which is in the Feral Tree. This increases your mana, and thus how much Innervate gives back to you, and decreases your mana cost, but also decreases your healing slightly.